UnBarbie Me, My Journey to Authenticity. Chapter 1. Meeting Barbie. I got my first Barbie when I was 6 years old. My parents bought me the Barbie and Ken pool set. It had an in-ground pool with a full deck where Ken and Barbie could bask in the sun. The set didn't come with Barbie and Ken, of course. My parents had to buy them separately. Barbie came first, but I watched enough television to know that Barbie without Ken was pointless. With some consistent pressure, I made that point clear to my parents, and Ken quickly joined his soulmate on the deck. I discovered that there was some skill in the art of recreating the fantasy the commercials promised. Being theoretically inclined, I did not have those skills. Since I was never that good at building things, the rails on the side of the pool didn't click properly, despite my best efforts. I did not let that stop me from seeing the vision, though. Barbie, Ken, and I were going to play. My parents and I had different ideas about how to play with Barbie at the pool. They were thinking I would pretend Barbie and Ken went swimming. I was thinking they had to actually go swimming. I remember filling up the pool with water, making sure Barbie was wearing her one-piece, and then laying her and Ken on the deck. I had carpet in my room at the time, so the carpet went for a dip too. The people who sold my parents Barbie and Ken didn't include a towel, but I was good at improvisation. A roll of toilet tissue did the trick. I figured Ken and Barbie would appreciate a nice sheet of Charmin waiting for them after their swim. By this time, I was old enough to know you were supposed to wrap your hair in a towel after a dip in the pool. For some reason, Charmin couldn't quite achieve the look I was going for. I didn't worry about it, though. After they went swimming, I used Barbie's brush to keep her hair neat and straight. I could never let it get frizzy. I was at first surprised, then impressed with the ease with which the brush would go through her hair. It was nothing like the nightmare of tugging, pulling, and yanking that greeted me during weekly hair braiding sessions with my mother. Barbie's hair would eventually get tangled, but no matter, my indoctrination had begun. I was introduced to a silky mane that required very little maintenance. In a short period of time, I transitioned from surprise to outright giddy with happiness. It seemed like there was so much I would be able to do with Barbie's hair and clothes. Unlike my own hair, the possibilities seemed endless. All little girls experiment with their Barbies, and I was no different. When Barbie couldn't get her shirt on, her arms and legs were pulled out and put back onto her body, her head came off when necessary, and sometimes she wore Ken's clothes. She also had the opportunity to be a client in my hair salon, where she would get color treatments and haircuts. The haircuts were pretty simple. They were often straight-line cuts, or as straight as a 6-year-old could cut, but as I grew more confident in my styling skills, the coloring presented a small challenge for me. Little did I know this would be a lifetime challenge, creating the perfect hair color. I didn't know exactly how I would get Barbie's hair color to change, I just knew that's what I wanted. Luckily, life answered me shortly after I received my inspiration. One of my relatives was getting married, and the cake would be baked at my house. I was always close by when my mother and aunts baked cakes. They were generous with the bowl and the spoon, and even when they weren't, they never washed the dishes right away. The batter was always available for me. I loved watching them take the cake out of the oven, flip it over, and smooth the icing all over. On this particular day, I watched one of them take a small dark blue bottle and pour a drop of blue into the icing. The white icing turned a powder blue. Then the light bulb went off. I knew then what I had to do. I saw 2 bottles. One pink and one blue. I didn't want Barbie to have pink hair, and I didn't want her to have blue hair, but I thought to myself that if I mixed the blue and pink bottles together and put them on her yellow hair, maybe I could get some kind of red. I was so proud of myself. I just knew I was a genius. all I was missing was the white lab coat. When no one was looking, and I was sure they finished putting the icing on the cake, I grabbed the bottles. I needed a cup to put some water in so I could dip Barbie's hair. I had been to several hair salons by this point, so I knew the routine, and some drops of the two colors. I wanted to make sure I didn't have to color her hair more than once, so I went ahead and used both bottles, every single drop. All I can say about this, my first grand hair idea, is mistake. It turned out that they did need the food coloring to finish another part of the cake that I hadn't seen. I didn't have to confess to taking the food coloring. The evidence was all over my hands, my clothes, the carpet in my room, and all over Barbie's hair and face. Needless to say, the adults were incensed. They had to go out to buy more food coloring, and I had made a mess that needed to be cleaned up. The only thing that kept my mother from the belt was the audience. The look on her face though was clear. I never did that again. None of them could understand what I was thinking. They kept asking me what I thought I was doing. When I answered, they wanted to know, did trying to change Barbie's hair color with food coloring make any sense? Of course, I didn't understand. How was I supposed to know it was food coloring? I couldn't even understand why they would call it that, and since when was icing food? I wasn't a stupid kid, at least I don't think so, and I was trying to get out of the punishment that was inevitable. The only reason the spanking hadn't happened yet was because there were people around, but I didn't want my mom to get to me later. I paused, took a few moments to appear as though I was thinking, and dutifully said, "No, my actions didn't make any sense at all." They must have felt I was sincere because I avoided that spanking, but the truth was, it made perfect sense. What were they talking about? My young mind asked. How else was I going to change Barbie's hair color? I saw the hair color boxes my mother would buy. There were 2 bottles in the box, just like the 2 bottles I used, and she would mix it together just like I did. I figured they were just mad because they had to buy more color, but that they knew deep down that I would have been able to make it work if I had been given enough time to figure out the right combination. At this point, I was around 6 or 7 years of age, and I hated my hair. Hair to me represented beauty. I don't know if I hated my hair or if I hated the process I had to endure to manage it. Either way, I was unsatisfied. My hair didn't flow, it didn't reach down to my shoulders. It was corn braids for me. My corn braids seemed to stay fresh for just a day or 2, and then they were a mess. My mother wasn't into pressing/hot combing my hair, so that wasn't an option. Little girls didn't get perms at the time, so for me, it was corn braids and ribbons, every day. While I hated both the corn braids and the ribbons, I could only do something about one of them, so the ribbons she put in my hair never made it to school. Every day, they were removed and let out on the street. Eventually, she gave up on the ribbons, but the corn braids were a constant source of embarrassment. By this time, some girls in my elementary school had already started perming their hair, while others seemed to be naturally blessed with good hair like Barbie's. Early on, the definition of good hair was very clear to me: long and straight hair. Hair that was able to grow long was like a badge of honor. I remember going to school with a couple of girls I thought were idiots because they couldn't seem to get their homework done and they would get bad grades, in 2nd grade. I was always waiting for them to feel bad or ashamed about getting the kind of grades they did, but it never happened. These girls had good hair. They were treated like royal princesses. There was no reason for them to feel bad about their performance in school because they had something much better: good hair. From my perspective, even the teachers seemed to favor those two. Subconsciously, I began to equate good hair with being treated, well, good. If my hair was good, not the nappy mess it was, then I would be happy. This idea was reinforced the very first time my hair was altered from its natural state. My first happy hair moment came when I was 8 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. So what happened after I met Barbie? Well, it was time to be Barbie beautiful.